For decades, we have been absolutely obsessed with a single number: 8 hours. We track it, we stress over it, we wear devices that give us arbitrary scores based on how many minutes we spent in deep sleep or REM. But modern sleep science is quietly undergoing a massive paradigm shift. It turns out one of the most critical variables for your long-term health and longevity might not just be how much you sleep, but when you sleep.
It is a fascinating shift in perspective, really. So many of us operate under the illusion of a sleep economy. We think of it like a bank account. We shortchange our sleep during the busy work week, getting maybe 5 or 6 hours a night, and then we confidently tell ourselves we will just catch up on the weekend by sleeping in until noon. But biologically speaking, the human body does not understand the concept of a weekend. The body operates through rhythm, not randomness. When your sleep timing becomes chaotic, multiple physiological systems immediately begin drifting out of synchronization.
That idea of synchronization is exactly what I want to dive into today, because it feels like modern humans are living in a world that constantly attacks our biological rhythm. We have artificial light blinding us at midnight, shift work, endless streaming platforms, and notifications buzzing on our nightstands. Our sleep timing changes dramatically from one day to the next. But our brains were never designed to handle this constant circadian disruption. What is actually happening inside the brain when we live like this?
To understand the damage, you have to look at a tiny but incredibly powerful region deep inside the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. You can think of the SCN as the master biological clock of the human body. It does not just tell you when to feel tired. It is the master conductor of a massive biological orchestra. It regulates hormone release, core body temperature, metabolism, immune function, and cellular recovery cycles. And just like a real orchestra, if the conductor suddenly starts wildly changing the tempo, the entire symphony falls apart. The system relies entirely on consistency.
I love that orchestra metaphor. It makes it so clear that the body isn't just a machine you can turn off and on at random. Hormones rise and fall predictably. Your temperature shifts. Recovery pathways open up at very specific times. So, when our sleep timing remains stable, I imagine the body just functions much more efficiently. But what happens when we constantly shift that schedule? Are we essentially putting our nervous system through a state of perpetual jet lag, even if we haven't left our zip code?
Exactly. In fact, researchers have coined a specific term for this exact phenomenon. They call it social jet lag. It is the mismatch between your internal biological timing and your external social behavior. Let's say you go to bed at 11 at night on a Tuesday, but on Friday and Saturday, you stay up until 3 in the morning and then sleep until noon. Physiologically, you have just flown across multiple time zones. Your internal clock glitches, and doing this week after week has profound consequences. Over time, this chronic circadian disruption is strongly associated with metabolic dysfunction, impaired glucose regulation, severe mood disturbances, and cardiovascular strain.
It is wild to think that just staying up late on a weekend is interpreted by the body as a traumatic disruption. And this brings us to one of the most profound developments in recent sleep science. There is a growing body of evidence linking this exact metric, sleep regularity, directly to mortality risk. We are not just talking about feeling a little groggy on a Monday morning. We are talking about longevity.
The data we are seeing now is incredibly compelling. Recent large-scale research suggests that individuals who maintain highly consistent sleep timing experience significantly lower risks of cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction, and overall mortality. Now, this does not mean that having perfect sleep habits guarantees you will live forever, but it reinforces a fundamental biological truth. The body deeply, fundamentally values rhythm. When you strip that rhythm away, the body has to work twice as hard just to maintain baseline operations.
Which explains why irregular sleep feels so terrible, even if you technically got 8 hours. You wake up after a chaotic sleep schedule and you have brain fog, you are craving sugar and carbohydrates, your emotions are completely unstable, and your anxiety is through the roof. It is because sleep is not an isolated event, right? It globally regulates our biology. If the rhythm is off, everything from cortisol timing to insulin sensitivity starts drifting apart.
Precisely. You mentioned cortisol and insulin, and those are perfect examples. If your biological clock expects you to be asleep, but you are awake staring at a screen, Your cortisol, your primary stress hormone, remains elevated at the wrong time. Your hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, become dysregulated, which is exactly why you crave junk food when you are tired. Furthermore, your autonomic nervous system loses its balance. Your immune regulation drops. Even your mental clarity and emotional resilience are compromised. The body is essentially in a state of physiological panic because it can no longer predict what is going to happen next.
This ties perfectly into something we see constantly when looking at wearable health intelligence. One of the most fascinating insights we gather from tools like the OXYZEN ring is how strongly sleep regularity influences recovery signals, specifically heart rate variability, or HRV. For anyone who might not be familiar, HRV is essentially a window into how well your nervous system is recovering and adapting to stress.
Heart rate variability is arguably one of the most important metrics for understanding human recovery. It reflects the flexibility and balance of your autonomic nervous system. What we see in individuals with chaotic, irregular sleep patterns is a massive hit to their recovery quality. Their HRV drops significantly. Their stress physiology remains elevated throughout the night. The body simply struggles to predict and prepare for the next day when the rhythm is constantly shifting. You are essentially asking your nervous system to navigate a dark room without a map.
And yet, modern culture actively celebrates this kind of biological sacrifice. We have this pervasive hustle culture that glorifies the grind. We sacrifice our sleep for late-night work emails, for endless entertainment, for social media scrolling. We subject ourselves to 24-hour stimulation, and then we sit around wondering why our energy is collapsing, why our stress is unmanageable, and why our baseline health seems to be deteriorating. We are treating biological limits as if they are just mental hurdles to push through.
The human nervous system is incredibly resilient, and it can compensate for this abuse for surprisingly long periods. You might operate on irregular sleep for years and think you are doing just fine. But eventually, the biological debt comes due. The body begins pushing back. The inflammation rises, the metabolic flexibility drops, and chronic dysfunction sets in. The good news, however, is that circadian systems are also highly responsive to positive change. You do not need to be perfect, but you do need to be intentional.
Let's talk about that intentionality. Because I think people hear this and feel overwhelmed. They think they need to engage in extreme biohacking to fix their sleep. But really, it is about returning the body to the rhythm it evolved for. What are the practical, daily behaviors that actually move the needle on sleep regularity?
It is much simpler than people think. The absolute most important step is establishing consistent sleep and wake times, especially the wake time. Even on weekends, try to wake up within 30 minutes of your usual weekday time. Second, morning sunlight exposure is critical. Getting natural light in your eyes early in the day sends a powerful signal to the SCN to anchor your circadian rhythm. Then, on the evening side, you have to limit late-night bright light and reduce digital stimulation. Create a stable daily routine. Small, consistent improvements in your daily rhythm create surprisingly massive physiological benefits over time.
It is so refreshing to hear that the solution isn't some complex, expensive intervention, but rather a return to nature's baseline. And this philosophy is really the driving force behind OXYZEN. The mission isn't simply to measure how many hours you laid in bed. It is about understanding recovery on a deeper level. It is about visualizing those circadian trends, tracking the HRV, and understanding how your unique physiology changes over time based on your behaviors.
Because the future of health intelligence cannot just be about reacting to disease once it has already manifested. The future is about recognizing imbalance early. It is about seeing the subtle drops in HRV, the fragmentation of sleep, the shifting of the circadian rhythm, and correcting those trajectories before burnout happens, before exhaustion sets in, before chronic, irreversible dysfunction becomes visible. Wearable technology only matters if it helps you interpret what your body is trying to tell you.
Your body is constantly, desperately trying to synchronize itself with the natural rhythm of the world, the cycle of light and darkness, the balance of activity and recovery, the delicate dance between wakefulness and deep restoration. We just have to get out of our own way and let it happen.
And perhaps that is the greatest takeaway here. One of the most powerful, evidence-based longevity tools in existence is not hidden inside extreme technological interventions or magic supplements. It is hidden inside something ancient, something woven into our very DNA: consistent, restorative, rhythmic sleep.
It really makes you rethink your entire evening routine. Tonight, when you're tempted to watch just one more episode or scroll for just another 20 minutes, ask yourself what you are actually trading for that brief stimulation. Because your biological clock is always ticking, and it thrives on the promises you keep to it.